All right. Welcome again to the Cubicle Liberation Podcast. I'm Joshua Fletcher. I'm here with David Hood. And today we're going to be talking about what we've kind of phrased as step 4 of kind of the inevitable success concept. And today we're going to be talking explicitly about action. And one of the things about action is if you've got all these things put in place, you really feel them and you're into them and you find yourself still not taking action, these are going to be the things that you want to look at to uncover what's going on with your process, where you are currently, to be able to put yourself in a position where you find yourself inevitably doing the things that will lead to better results in your business, your life, success in general, and those kinds of things. David, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's really good. I think you kind of alluded to the fact that if you do the first 3 steps well, then this step 4 becomes easier. But there's some additional things, as you pointed out before. Sometimes you have everything set up. You have a great plan. You know what you need to do, but you're just not taking action. This is actually really common. And so we're going to talk about some ways to kind of help you navigate that, that I think will help you get to actually, you can see I put in all caps, not just to plan the action, but to actually execute the actions or action sets.
This is one of the big things that I've found in my life is that a lot of times I really see clearly that something would be better than what I'm currently doing. And I haven't yet taken action on that. And so what we're going to talk about today are some things that could be the reasons for that kind of thing. Right. And so we're going to talk about things that really could be to blame for, or the reason for not really getting into action, because there's going to be a lot of times when you've gone through those first steps and put the whole thing in place that you just find yourself going and doing whatever you're going to do. But if you've gone through those steps and you find yourself not taking those actions to get that stuff in place, we're going to talk about some of that stuff today. So,
yeah. And I think it's like the action part is kind of the final piece of the puzzle, but if you don't have it, or it's more like the final ingredient in the recipe. If you don't have that ingredient, then the recipe just doesn't work. At some point, you're going to have to take action in order to be able to have your inevitable success. Even if you're like a freaking philosopher, at some point you have to take some action towards communicating that, or in some way, shape, or form, there's going to be some sort of action that you're going to take in order to complete the whole set. So
so one of the things that I kind of preface this all with, and this isn't everything, but it's a way to look at all of this, is that you want to be either moving away from a certain thing. It's like carrot and stick. It's like you want to move away from the stick that's going to smack you and move toward the carrot that's going to draw you into a certain behavior, right? And so getting like really clarity. We've talked about clarity a ton, but getting more and more clear with the vision you have for the way you want things to be is going to inevitably really draw you to that place. And so clarity, don't forget about that. Like it's something that really needs to be in place for this action to be something that feels rather effortless, in that you wake up and it's what you want to do. Yeah. And the better you can wake up in that situation, the more action you're going to take and the more clarity you're going to get that continues to move you along toward the situation you want to be in and what you want to create.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to motivate yourself to put yourself in a position that you're not clear on, or even just to take an action set that you're unclear.
I want to be better. I want to lose some weight. Like it's
I want to
really
rank a website.
Yeah.
Just have on your list,
like
rank a website.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a whole lot of little steps in there, and your brain knows that. Your brain knows that there's ambiguity there. Yeah. And so it gives you resistance, because it's like, hey, we don't really know what we want to do here. So you got to kind of be clear on that. Mm-hmm. So, and one thing you pointed out, which was kind of, if you're not acting, you need to build some additional context, or at least you need to explore and navigate the context that you're in.
Yeah.
If you're not healthy, if your brain isn't working very well.
Yeah. And that's,
or
yeah, that's something I've shared here and elsewhere as well. Just being very clear about this, you still might like you might be clear about the steps necessary from a certain point, but you're, over here and you've got to get to that point. Like you've got to get to the point where you wake up fresh and enthusiastic about the thing you're doing. And so you've got to figure out what, like, that's the contextual stuff, is being able to close the distance to where you can really start with what you figured out about where you want to go with things. And, for me, there was some brain health stuff. There's other, things that come up in life, family, kids, whatever it might be, that if you can really close this distance, it's like the closer to the point where you can really start working on the action plan, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like if you find yourself way over here, you might not be motivated because there's still a lack of clarity to get to the point where you wake up wanting to work on this. And for me,
something that is,
yeah, go ahead, David. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, or there's something that is acting on you, or in the context that you're not aware of, and so you're not able to counteract it or account for it appropriately.
Yeah.
So that's, again, understanding the context that you're in. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, that was for the most part. Like if you've got a plan put together and it's like, I know how to host a website, get good content on the website, create conditions such that it ranks, it's going to make money because you've done the research on the market and you have a really good understanding of the people who might be looking for that thing. It's like, well, if I can get to the start point of that, this is going to generate money that really puts me in a place. And so puts me in a place. What's the place? Right? It's like, place. Oh, I've got a place in Switzerland, Costa Rica, Arizona, Alaska, like whatever. Like the clearer you get, like, and as I look over a lot of the people who are internet influencers and things like that, what they've done is they've painted like really a picture of how they live, where they want to live, where other people, might want to live, and how they want to go about their day and things like that. And that's one of the reasons why they're influencers, right? Why the picture they paint is something that people aspire toward, and getting to that place, like more and more clarity on, like, why in the world are you doing this? Right. David, you talked about this, like the Jim Rohn quote, right?
Yeah. What, like, so the quote, I'm pretty sure this is Jim Rohn. I know he talked about it, but I don't know if he came up with it. But basically his idea is like, if your why is big enough or strong enough or powerful enough, the kind of how becomes easy. So for an example would be, if your child is outside and a cougar is attacking it, it doesn't really matter how hard it is. You're going to go and you're going to, as a parent, you're going to fucking attack that cougar and protect your child. Or I think someone else gave I think a really good analogy. It's like, if your child, let's say you're in New York and you're across a building and let's say you want to put a ladder on and you want to walk across. No, you're not going to do that. Why that? You're 20 stories up or something. Why would you do that? But again, if your child is on the other side and that building is burning, now the why is very strong and you're going to go across it. You're going to risk your life to go across it, because otherwise, why would you? And so this is what I think, the parts 1 through 3 worked on a lot, but also you'll need to regularly tap into. Can you hear that now? Okay.
Yeah. I thought it was you.
You can use that? What's that?
A little bit, a little tapping in the background. Okay. It's all good.
Probably a lot louder for me. But anyway, so, constantly reminding yourself why you're doing this. What is the reason for doing it? And I wanted to really touch on this real quick, go back to this real quick before we move on to that, which was that if you are struggling with this is very normal. Most people actually struggle with this at least some of the time. I know I go through ups and downs where I want to take action, and other times where I want to not take action. So don't feel bad. And even if you've been
like even to like double down on that, I do most of the time. Like I've got it, like my motivation level can be extremely high. I can be extremely focused, but that threshold, that barrier is like, I've got to really nail it to be all in on a certain thing. And
same here.
The more I've worked with people, and, at this point, thousands of people, like there's folks who are just like, I want it to be a little better, and off they go. Right. Personally, and a lot of people I've worked with, it needs to be way more clear. And actually, like I think people bring a lot, like so much more to the table when they're really, really challenged in a certain thing. Like there's a personality characteristic that seems to only activate for some people. And I say some, maybe a lot of people that are like, you can't do this, right? There's like this, like, yeah, you've got a plan, but strong likelihood that's not going to work out. You're not going to achieve the thing you want to achieve. And so I kind of have like personally, like a very high activation energy to get me to bring everything into getting over that threshold where I'm really all into a project. And so one of the things, like with the whole series we've done and the podcast we've had for 2 years now, like we want to make it like easy, right? In certain ways of seeing easier, like, yeah, you can do this, right? Here's a path that leads you through that. But if you've seen that, like it might be that you haven't, like you might say, well, I want to pay off my mortgage or whatever else it might be. And you're still not taking action. Maybe you need to think about like some other things, like, retiring your parents or changing the world, like whatever it might be. Like that might be the psychological thing that's going to get you over that hump, that threshold to really bring everything you have into it. I know I'm somebody like that. Right. So.
Yeah. And the same thing for me, if you have like just kind of meh goals, you're not going to be real excited to go in and take action. But if you have really big goals or really goals that really excite you, they don't even have to be big. They just have to be exciting.
Yeah.
Then it's gonna be a lot easier to take action. And there's a little trick that I have. So this is directly related to the big enough why. So you have big goals, you figured out what's important, right? What I try to do is if I'm having trouble, okay, there's this next action on my list. I got my list of actions here. Okay, next thing, I really don't want to do it. I try to program myself to, okay, this next action gets me the private island. Okay, let's just say I really want the private island. This is really exciting to me. So I think about that action gets me the private island. So trying to work backwards, to work forwards and then backwards from the little micro actions that you have to take every day to the big goals. And tying this is something that does help me, and I think it can give you a little bit more motivation.
So talk about those next two pieces, the priority project groups and priority projects, and maybe big picture action steps. Like what do those mean to you? Right. Because like we got them up here, but I want to understand how your engineering of your own life is set up.
Yeah. This is sort of a flow. Right? Yeah, this is sort of like an ordered set of thinking and actions and processing. So start with what's really important in your life. And if you don't have that, then, how can you set your personal business goals if you don't know what's important? So I've tried to really think about what's important, try to build on that and try to constantly work on that. And then from that, I'm able to use that kind of as an input for my big business and personal goals. Okay, so now I have these big business and personal goals. I want to build and sell an agency for $5 million or something. Okay. So now I take those big personal goals and I can create what I would call, and this is where it's a little bit more about me and a little bit, your setup can be slightly different than mine. Priority project groups. So I only have a handful of groups that are of different types of projects that I have for my business. I have client stuff, I have lead gen stuff, and then I have my information business. Those are sort of my priority project groups. And then there's some lesser ones or some kind of side ones like health and stuff like that. And then specific priority projects. So within those groups, I have kind of so I have projects within the group. So within the client stuff, I have multiple projects for the client. And then let's say for a project, I have the action sets. So what are the actions that I'm trying to take, or at least kind of at a high level. And then I think I've maybe skipped a few steps where where from there it's like, okay, what is it? What are my action sets? And then from there it's like, okay, what am I going to do actually today? So this is sort of a flow of really top down, 10,000 foot view, all the way down to what I need to do today. That's kind of what this is meant to represent.
Yeah, this is one of the things that like I kind of like about like running this with you, because I tend to start at the other end of the spectrum, right? As far as like I'm really looking at like input and my output. And so I can always watch my output, right? I can watch what I'm doing and judge whether or not that's going to, take me someplace, right? Put things in a better situation or condition for myself, my family, the people I care about, all that kind of thing. And if that output is not looking like it's really going to take me there, I adjust my inputs, right? And this is where like, a vision board or what you listen to in the morning, or what you're like really, I say it's like focused on, but if you find yourself having trouble even focusing on these places you want to be, like what's that about? It's likely that what's happening is that you're inundated with other inputs that are taking your well, they're just taking up the bandwidth, so to speak, of inputs. And then your goals that you're acting on become about a different thing. And so, as I kind of try to work on engineering my life such that, I'm moving more toward things I want to have in my life. One of the things I look at adjusting, limiting, changing is my inputs. And
so
like
by that, you mean,
yeah, it
like
goes
your
back to
day-to-day
like
action sets,
yeah.
right?
Well, no, not action. Like action is a result of.
Okay.
Like action is the result. Like if I don't find myself taking action and doing the things that are on my board, it's like that is a situation that exists because the inputs are not sufficient to get me to do those things.
Right? Elaborate on what you mean by inputs.
Inputs are anything that comes into your mind, right? What you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you think about, like anything that is directly in your, consciousness screen at any given time.
Okay.
It's like, why is that the thing that happened? Maybe I was watching the wrong show last night on Netflix. Maybe I was listening to the wrong music. Maybe like whatever it might be.
Garbage in, garbage out for sure.
Yeah. Giggle, right?
Sort of like what you eat affects your body. What goes in your ears and your
all
eyes,
that kind of thing.
Affects your brain.
Inputs are where I spend all of my time trying to adjust my inputs such that the output is something that's definitely going to take me in a better direction and get me some building blocks I can work on. We've talked about those in the series. Some building blocks that I can use to get to a better place. And if my actions are not happening in a way that get me those building blocks, I look directly at inputs. That's what I do.
Okay.
So and I think that I could adjust music, I could adjust food, I could adjust, television programs, Netflix, Hulu, whatever it might be. Like I look at that because that's like a decision I can make that puts like it's input and output. That's how the brain works, and it runs through a filter. And if you get different inputs, the filter's even going to change. And if you have not found yourself in a situation where you are taking direct action on a plan that looks like it works, for me, I would recommend focusing on what you are putting in your your system, your conscious experience of life.
Absolutely. I think this is like the context. This is what I would call the environment,
Yeah.
that you're working in.
It came from.
Yeah. And no, this is totally fine. Cause I think that's really extra clarity on what on some the environment, and also what you already said about context. I think it's totally true. If you're sitting around listening to, like, say, there's all sorts of different talk radio about how, short people are evil, and you're listening to that 24/7, right? That's going to affect how you think about
you're
things.
Short. And now you think you're evil.
Right. Or tall, or either one,
Yeah.
Point is, though, that like what is going on in your environment affects you. What color things are, it might not affect you directly that much, or it might not be, it might be kind of hard to tie that each individual one to you, but maybe the kind of music you listen to, like you said, the food that you eat, or whether or not you listen to music, So I think tuning this and playing with what inputs work for you really is a great idea in terms of what, and identifying and thinking about, okay, today I listened to ocean sounds all day, and actually I was super fucking productive. Okay, well, maybe that's something.
It's one of the reasons I like the backdrop that you've had for a lot of these. It's like, it's all these really cool places. Right. And so if you wake up, it's like, this is where I could be. And you look around, it's like, I'm not there yet. I really think about like what's on the background. I don't know if you're doing a full record.
No, they can see it. Yeah.
It's like if
they're
one
on
of these
if you're
people,
on the YouTube,
imagine, really get into, and this is one of the things that I've talked about in a bunch of different ways, but it's like method acting, really get into this place where this is my life. I wake up and I live in this, peach colored house, and I walk down a few steps and I go to a cafe. I get a cappuccino and, a muffin or whatever. And then I go over here and this is my boat. And then I go out into Greece or Serbia or something, someplace. It's I get to go tool around with my family, and really getting into that more and more.
The feeling of what it's really, like.
The feeling
that's going to be very motivating for some people. Maybe this isn't for you.
No,
I do have a variety.
I would say it's for everyone. Some people may have easier job, or they this is everyone. This is how the human mind works.
No, I mean, this specific goal of being at that place is maybe not everybody wants to live on the beach.
Have a desire to live here, or for me, it's mountains. I like the ocean, Alaska. Exactly.
Yeah.
Find your thing, and then just being really working into this place where this is my life.
This is not just for the podcasts or for, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go. Yeah. Contextualize this, please.
No, that's really, I'm really happy you brought it up, because I wasn't even noticing that, because this is my actual computer background. And every once in a while I'll add pictures to it that I think are beautiful. And then it's places I want to go, things I want to do. I want to go to this resort. And I think about why am I going to stay focused on my priorities today? Because I could just sit around and play video games. It's not going to kill me today to do that. Right. It's because I want to go here. I want to be able to experience this. I want to be able to go to these beautiful places. I'm setting the environment. I'm setting my inputs. And this works for me pretty well.
I want this to not just be my computer background. I want this to be the backdrop of my life.
I want to see it firsthand. That's one thing I think about. It's this. It's one thing. It's great to actually. I'm very grateful for these pictures. These pictures are really helpful for me, and I get enjoyment out of them. But it's a completely different experience to actually be there. And so and I try to set that. And I do think it helps maybe just add a little bit of extra flavor to these. To kind of these videos. So I think that's a really great way of going. I think it's actually, I don't think it's so much going a different way compared to this. I think it's
just a different approach or way of looking at it. No, they both fit together perfectly well.
Absolutely. And I again, if you in your environment, if it's really smelly or really crappy or something like that, maybe that's not motivating for you. So you need to kind of change those things, and you can just tweak that, and you can figure things out, learn how your brain works for you.
Well, and one of the things I would introduce here is say you've paid attention to this stuff. You might have stuff in your own home environment. I know I have, right? Where things are just kind of cluttered. And every time you walk out, I work in my backyard, I got a studio built. It's great because I don't have to drive and deal with traffic and all that kind of stuff. but I was like walking through a back room that we had, and there was, a bunch of my unorganized tools and things like that. Coming to my office, every time I was triggered to be like, I got to clean that up.
Yeah.
And then I'd sit down and I'd start trying to work, and I was like, well, maybe I should go clean that up. Right?
Yeah.
It keeps pulling you out of this place where you're immersed, and the
Yes.
thing that is really going to take you to a different place. You're getting jogged out of that by stuff in your environment that you expose yourself to all the time. Right. And so like seeing, smelling, like all that kind of thing, these are not just like random, like you see stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And so if you're constantly seeing things that feel like I got to clean that up. So it seems like, okay, go do your action, priority stuff like that. The best thing that you might do is clean that shit up. And then every time you walk to your office, that's not triggering you to want to go back to it and deal with stuff. So this is where we're kind of talking about the contextual elements of taking action. Like if you've really got a really clear vision and a plan that looks like, I say plan, I don't use the word plan a ton in the way I organize stuff, but you can, and it's perfectly valid to do so. But if I find myself not doing the things that are priorities for me that I've identified, I can realize that there's actually stuff that got triggered that have been bigger or otherwise important priorities for my mind that I expose myself to. And so let's just eliminate those.
There's something you use the word immersion, and I think that this is great. When you have your inputs set up really well, it enables immersion, which is really useful. I think we've mentioned it several times, but a lot of the work we do so when you think about doing work, it's not really the quantity so much as it's the quality, but also just like getting deep into your brain. It takes time and energy for you to start to get deep into where you can be the most effective that you can be, to where all you're thinking about is like what's going on in that moment. So you're in the moment, you get the flow, what's called flow, sort of like if you envision like, I think it was Jerry Rice, a famous receiver in football, when he talked about when the football is being thrown at him, his whole world is the football. All of his senses, all of his brain, everything is focused on that one thing.
I'll even take that down another step. It's not the football, it's the point of the football. It's a singular focus.
Right.
And I was a receiver in football. I know this. You can't catch a football, but you can focus on the point of the football and your hands will catch it. Like you've cleared the clarity component. Like it's way, way, way more important than most of us realize.
But also the focus. If he's like, oh, I left my oven on in the middle of the throw, doesn't work. It's gonna, back to Fletch's point about like the messy, the messy work environment. Some people can work in that to some degree and it doesn't bother them. But if you constantly find yourself, oh, I need to do that, and it's what's happening is it's taking you time to get deep into this point to where now you're really focused, you're really immersed in your work, and then your brain pulls you out. And now it takes time to get kind of back in. So if you think about it, that the quality of your work, the efficiency of your work is going to be much lower than if you have good inputs or, excellent inputs. And they don't have to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. I got the construction. I can't control that going on. It's just going to enable you to be deeper, and it's going to feel better. You're going to feel better about your work. It's going to be easier to be motivated. You're not going to really need motivation when you get into the flow of things.
Yeah.
You just
motivation is a result. Willpower is a result. Like these are things that are results of this other, like that's why I'm like I pay attention to the result, and if the result is not happening, I adjust stuff upstream of it.
I like that.
Tends to a lot of times be inputs, right?
To be fair, this is kind of a subcategory of inputs. This is an input to me. It's an input to my brain. Looking at a big personal goal of going to this specific resort. I need to update my pictures here, add some more to it. Is an input. It's something I see, right? And so if I find myself not being motivated, you know, I do this sometimes. I'll listen to different music while I
Do.
work, or maybe no music. What's that?
I said do. You do this sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I do sometimes. Usually, hopefully once a day. I think that's a really great point. We're spending a lot of time on inputs, and I think it's appropriate because I think you're right. I think there's a lot of what goes on around us that enters our brains that we, you know, like, do you listen to garbage? You know, when you go to YouTube, do you listen to great, excellent brain building content like this?
It's one of the things that social media hijacks. Like these are inputs,
and
right? And it brings our brain to these places where it seems important. It's like, oh, I wish I could, you know, fix this stuff in Afghanistan or with COVID, like whatever it might be, right? I'm not saying they're not important, but like really, what are you going to do today that changes that? Like okay, until you can, that's likely not something that you want to spend cycles in your brain on trying to figure out, because you only got so many.
I try not to,
obviously.
I try to ignore news as much as I can. It's hard sometimes, but I try to ignore it as much as possible. And I think this goes back to a point that I was trying to, or goes to a point that I wanted to talk about, which is relevant now. I like the idea of kind of taking back control of your time. You mentioned, I can't remember what you mentioned, like social media. So social media, but also just like email. So if you leave, I remember back when I worked at TI, my boss wanted me to leave the notification on Outlook, that whenever an email came in, I would get the notification.
Okay. So let's talk about email even, right?
Yeah.
So finish your story with that. But I'm kind of interested to understand or to know more about how you use email, right? So talk about your TI
if I'm doing it
with email.
I'm not perfect, but I definitely make sure I close email, and I go significant periods throughout the day where I don't check email.
Okay. So I check email once a week.
Okay. That's great. You know, that's fantastic. That's better than me.
Again, no, it just, well, better, maybe not, right? I might miss some stuff that if I would have, you know, responded to earlier,
I have to check it a bit more often, probably.
Right. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's whatever it is, but just know that all of these things, you can have a great life without any of them in there at all.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Unless you rely on them to bring you income and you need to interact with them. So I only introduce them when you know it's necessary to engage with in a way that gets you to looking at this, you know, friggin' awesome wave breaking.
Right. I have some clients that I've set up to where there's an expectation that I would get back to them within like a day or two.
Like,
so I can't ignore it.
Right. I have a different.
There's a couple of,
for the most part. Yeah.
There's a couple of tips for email that I would say that is helpful for me for me to clear it out on a regular basis. So don't let it just build up, and don't use it as a to-do list. And so that way, when you go to your email, it's less and you can take care of it pretty quickly. And, but don't leave it open. The boss that wanted me to leave the thing up, it's like I'm getting emails every minute, right? So how am I supposed to get into deep work? How am I supposed to really focus if every single time there's something else pinging you? And I'm not saying you can't ever look at your email. You know, I think once a day is a really great goal to have. I try to do more like in the morning and then before I leave for the day, so that clients, this is more about a sales thing. Clients want to feel like you're there and paying attention. But same for texts. Some people I know, I will not name people. It's not you, it's other people that think that, you know, text. Oh God, somebody texted me at 9:30 and I got to respond tonight. No, you don't.
I woke up in the middle of the night. I got to pee. So now I got to send a message back. Like,
right. No. Just you own your time unless you let other people take it.
Well, and this is famous even in industries that are not like digital. Like my dad, he works in construction. Like it's way too common that somebody will send something out into the day on Friday saying something, knowing that it's like they sent it out because they wanted to cover their ass on something that they needed to communicate this week. knowing there's no chance it's going to get done. And then it's like, well, hey, I sent it out this week. Like an email or a text or even a phone call at time, like any of these things that other people are choosing to do to bring into your awareness. That's
your
their
input.
to do. That's their to-do list.
Yes.
They're trying to get it on yours, but you've got to really focus on prioritizing the things that you know are necessary to get the stuff done that you need to do to, be snorkeling around on this cool reef, right?
Exactly. Or just to I feel like I give you permission to remove all feeling of guilt or responsibility to answer people's queries on their time to you, be it via email, text, calls, chat programs, social media. Do it on your time. Set up a schedule. If you aren't available, if you're focusing on work, don't answer the phone. And that's fine. If I'm calling you, Fletch, and you're busy, you're making love to your wife, you don't answer it. I mean, unless you're kind of into that kind of thing,
Both of those things happened yesterday, David. I'll just
awesome.
I'll leave it ambiguous.
That's true.
You can read between the lines. It's all good.
Yeah. So and that's fine. I'm on board with that because I'm going to do the same thing. You send me a message via email or via social media. I'm usually going to get to it within a reasonable time frame, but it's almost never going to be right away.
Here's the flip side of that, right? And this was something that didn't work out yesterday. We were going to talk yesterday, but like if you told somebody you're going to be there and you aren't there, just know there's potentially going to be repercussions for you maybe not showing up in the way that the other person expected. And you might wind up with
that's a little different.
It's different, but you should be mindful of it. Right.
Of course.
So you're
that's more like
about
keeping your commitments,
keeping like your email, like you need to respond to clients. That's not the role I'm in. So I don't have to do it. Right. I have a role that's a little different. So I don't have to do that. So I get to focus on SEO stuff or copywriting stuff.
Right.
And
people are going to be upset at you when you do this. My wife gets upset at me and she says, you don't respond to your texts. And it's like, I will respond an hour or two later sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it's like, to me, it's like, there's nothing really I can tell her I'm blue in the face that sometimes you just gonna have to wait a couple hours, or you email or you call, and I'm just in the middle of something, and that's something that other people might get upset at you, and you're gonna have to manage that to some degree because you need to be able to get yourself into that immersion. That's such an important getting yourself the right inputs. This is why like robocalls sometimes really rub me the wrong way, because just like they're trying to almost like stealing part of my life. They're making that choice for me. And so that does bother. I get that there's some amount of marketing that needs to go on. So that's not, it's kind of a little bit
and so in that way, you can like, even as you're, building whatever you're doing, like if people can pull you out of immersion and you need to be in immersion, you need to have somebody else be able to handle the message that comes in, to be able to respond to it, say, hey, we're going to get to that in the next 4 hours or 8 hours or a week or whatever it might be, so that you can then focus on your stuff. If you're the game player and doing the stuff that's necessary to make everybody win, this is like one of the things I've come to realize is that the gatekeeper or whatever plays a very functional role. Like if somebody was doing brain surgery on you and you called them and they picked their cell phone up, it's like, dude, like, why didn't you have somebody answer that call? Right.
Not appropriate.
Like you want that. Like you need it when you're immersed in a very important task. Okay. Well,
I've had someone
follow suit, right?
Whose voicemail was like, hey, don't leave a voicemail because I won't listen to it. And
I'll just call you back. I had to switch phones. I know your number or whatever. Right. Yeah.
Right. Or text me or email me. Here's some other ways to get in contact with me. I got a new phone a couple months ago and I haven't set up the voicemail yet. It's like, I can't leave a voicemail. Oh, that actually sounds pretty good to me. Because I don't want to listen to voicemail anymore. But also I have like when I've had developers, they're like, what's your Skype? And I'm really hesitant to give them my Skype because if I have Skype open, they can ping me. at
Yeah,
any
I don't
time.
have
They can
Skype.
take control
Like
of my
I've
time.
got an account, but I'm not on there. So I log into
Yeah,
Skype and I've got 844 messages. And I'm like, I'm not going to look at any of those.
yeah.
Like,
Right.
okay, so if you didn't know me well enough to know that I don't use Skype, but you got my Skype thing and we get connected somehow,
Right.
like I'm that is not, even though that, so this is where like shiny object thing, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I got to keep all these communication channels open because I don't know like
Yeah.
where
You
this
don't want to
huge
miss something
opportunity is
important.
going to come. This
Yeah.
is what this speaks to, getting the previous 3 steps in this whole series put together, where it's like, yeah, I might not make $10 million, but I think I can make 8. So I'm going to work this plan,
Yeah.
right? Because there might be a 10, there might be a 15, but if you start indulging in too many of those things, you're not going to get your 8.
Mm.
And that is this thing where it's like, well, it might be blah. I should open it.
And
I
also,
don't
like,
do that not
I think
anymore.
there's a mindset shift from being an employee to being an
Yes.
owner,
Yes.
a builder. Because, you know, when I was working for TI, if I got constantly distracted by emails, I still got paid the same. But if
Yeah.
you're trying to build a business and you're trying to actually be productive and you're accountable for that, and if you're productive, then your business as well. If you're not productive, your business doesn't do well, then you're going to need to take back control of your time. Again, this is all back to the inputs. It's going to be a lot more motivating. When
Yeah.
you're in the flow, it feels great. When you get that
It
work
does.
done, you know, an afternoon of work sometimes where I've really been in the flow and I really feel like I've kicked ass. It's like, wow, that feels great. And that carries over to the next day, the next week, that it's like, that felt great. I'm going to do more of that. That
Becomes a
is really
habit.
great. I'm going to keep building on that.
Yep. Agreed.
So
Agreed.
let's go to motivation. So the motivation is, you know, it's important that you be motivated. There's a little bit of context here, I think, because sometimes what you can do with work, instead of thinking about, I got to motivate myself to do something I don't want to do, you can kind of work in your mind to make it so that you actually want to do it. Like for a long time, this is something that naturally came to me, but I think some people, they kind of maybe have to work a little bit harder on this. Like, learning is fun. So if you don't like learning new things, you kind of have, you know, it's going to be hard work for you to learn the things you need to learn to grow. But if you can flip it around somehow, you can work on your brain and your beliefs and stuff like that, and you can change it to where actually learning is fun. It gives me a great feeling, gives me a feeling of satisfaction. You can focus on the kind of the positive you get out of it. So another example would be like for eating healthy. I try to focus on not so much what I'm not eating, but like with a salad, I'll be like, I like this parts of the salad. I like it when the salad has the fruit and the nuts and the cheese in it. And so that's what I'm going to focus on when it's like, I want to go eat something healthy. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this part. So that way it's actually not me overcoming the motivation. I'm not needing so much the motivation as I am kind of reframing it. That said, there are going to be things you have to do that there's kind of no way around it. Going to the dentist. I mean, I guess you could maybe focus on the stuff like that, but there's going to be things that are just going to be unpleasant in life that you're going to have to do. That's nobody can get around that, really. Maybe to some degree you can get around that. So motivation is still kind of important. What do you think about motivation, Fletch?
Yeah. So I see it like a wave, right? And I see like a wave, like you've got things that you're kind of motivated to do, right? Maybe you're motivated to watch TV. Like you ask yourself why. Like it's like, oh, I learned something new, or I got involved with some scandal or some true crime thing. Maybe I'm motivated to work, but only in like a certain capacity. Like one of the things I look at doing is like increasing how much I'm motivated to do it. Right. I don't always I don't inherently try to change what I'm motivated by. I try to
Okay.
increase the amount of motivation I have. So if I'm
Okay.
motivated to learn, which I seem to be, right, that's kind of one of the things that pulls me into a bunch of stuff. I try to be like, okay, even when I'm doing some kind of relatively monotonous task, like say keyword research, I I try to associate learning to that task. Even though it seems like the same thing every time, I try to associate something that I'm inherently motivated by to the task that needs to be done. And then I try to increase how much motivation I have for it. Like where I'm, it's another association again. It could also be contextual with, health or testosterone or epinephrine, like whatever it might be, right? These are different ways you can really change the peaks and the valleys to have a greater magnitude, right, so to speak. So if I'm already motivated by learning, I try to get myself to see monotonous tasks that I need to do as learning, and then I try to maximize how much motivation I have for that. So then I try to associate, okay, let's just talk psychologically. I try to associate, if I can learn this, I can be on this beachside resort, right? And so in that way, the motivation becomes even larger, right? Magnitude, right? That wave becomes even larger, and it's attached to the activity I need to do.
And this actually is very similar to what I was talking about up here, where like I'm trying to tie this specific action in my brain. I'm trying to associate, you're just thinking about something, two different things at the same time, trying to associate this thing that maybe is unsavory to kind of a positive, positive thing that I'm already kind of naturally motivated for. And then you can kind of, just by focusing in on it, I think that increases your motivation.
Yeah, because like learning for me is like one of the bigger motivations I have. And so doing a monotonous task, it's like, well, you're not inherently doing anything that you can learn from, right? Because you're doing something that you're just following steps. But if you can go through that and be like, oh, I can like improve efficiency in this way, or I can see some new insight that I wouldn't have seen before. It's like, oh, what can I learn by going through this task again and trying to look at it differently, right? And in that way, you kind of tie that wave of motivation in with a thing. And for me, it's learning, like for the most part. There's other things, but just stick with that. Like if I can find a way to look at anything from a perspective or lens where I can learn, I'm inherently motivated by it. And then if I can increase how much I'm motivated in doing that task a little bit, then I'm going to feel drawn to do that thing even more. Right.
Yeah.
And so you like one of the biggest tools I have is like in a certain way, you call it a mirror. Like watch yourself. You're motivated to do things, whether it's sitting on your ass and watching TV and eating Cheetos. You're highly motivated to do that because it beats out everything else. Why are you motivated to do that? Understanding that can help you start to associate these things differently and get yourself to do, some things that are just as pleasurable as sitting on your butt, eating Cheetos and watching TV, but actually put you in a better position to do some of these things that are going to move you into a better position to live a life that you enjoy a lot more and that other people enjoy more. Right.
Yeah. And actually you brought up something that I think is helpful as well, creating negative associations with things you don't want to do. Because when you're choosing to do something, you're choosing to not do a bunch of other things. So I oftentimes, if I find myself, okay, I've watched too much TV programs lately. Okay. So now what I have to do is I think about the TV programs and I think about being poor or having no money or not being able to pay for a doctor's bill for my kids or not being able to send them to the dentist or not be able to buy them books, stuff like that. I think about like, if I kind of take it to kind of an extreme. If I sit around and watch TV all day and eat Cheetos, okay, now I'm going to gain a bunch of weight. I'm going to be unhealthy. I'm not going to live as long. I'm not going to be as productive. I'm not going to be as happy, all these things. And I try to associate those things that I know intellectually that I don't want to do. And so what this is doing is it's creating a difference in the motivation because you're doing, if you're maybe you don't have to increase the motivation of doing the mundane tasks, but you can decrease the motivation to do the things that you actually know you shouldn't be doing.
Like one of the big things with this segment is to understand that we as a conscious being has a certain power to engineer the way our mind functions, and therefore we function in life. Right? These are things that you can start to, notice and then do something about that changes our behavior. And we're always going to do like one of the things, like we're always going to do what it seems like the best thing that we should do at the time is, right? Whether that's like literally kill somebody or, go exercise or whatever it might be. So like at any given time, that's what we're doing, period. We're doing the thing that seems like it's the best thing for us to do. So if we find ourselves doing some things that are not really taking us in a good direction, let's try to engineer ourselves in a condition such that those things are not what seem to be the best thing for us to spend our time and effort and attention on. Let's really reshape that. And these are some ways to do that. So that's really most of what I have focused on for a little while and continue to focus on.
That's great.
Just engineering conditions such that you take actions that are putting you in a better and better place to experience what you want to have as far as your life and that kind of thing goes. Right.
Another thing that I alluded to before was kind of momentum. So for example, if you get, focusing on building momentum and when you do a really good job one day and you work really well, it's going to be easier to work really well the next day. So what this leads to is you can kind of identify the fact that, hey, working today really well isn't just about working well today. If I do this today, it actually carries over into tomorrow and into next week. And so actually I get a lot of benefit just by being a little bit of discipline today. To me, it's sort of like if trying to build the discipline of meditating, just meditate for like 2 minutes. Start off 2 minutes just to get the habit and the momentum there. 2 minutes every morning. Everybody can meditate for 2 minutes and you get that time back. Okay. Now then a couple weeks later, you do 3 minutes, then 4 minutes, and 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever. The point is that by identifying the value of a task beyond just what you get that day, and identifying the fact that you get the momentum creates maybe a more appropriate value in your mind that can give you even more motivation to do it.
Like working one of the things, today. Yeah, no, go ahead. Finish up.
Go ahead. No, I was done.
Like one of the things with momentum that I see is that like what momentum does is it allows you to progress through certain obstacles that you wouldn't be able to progress through without momentum, right? If you just start right next to it, it's like you can't push through it. But if you start and you get a running start at it, you can move through that thing. And so that momentum concept is like it's something that bears thinking about, because when you have a certain amount of momentum, you can move through obstacles that otherwise would stop you. And so for me, like looking at this from a physics perspective, but also an experiential perspective, is like if you're up and you go for a 2 or 3 mile run every morning, or you meditate every day, or you put 6 hours of unobstructed work into a computer every day, whatever it might be, right? I had one of my lights go out.
I know. It was like, it just got dark.
Oh, now we're getting serious. I got the half and half face.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you totally have that. Yeah.
So like one of the things that can
Squirrel.
Yeah. One of the things that you can do with that is to understand that even though it's hard right now to get through the obstacle, that might be my microphone. You might not be able to see it so well, but like I can't get through the microphone now, but if I had a lot more momentum, I could. So it might not feel like you're able to do the thing right now. Like you talked about, like you start with 2 minutes, go to 3 minutes, go to, 4, 5, 6, whatever it might be. well, I can't do this for 10 minutes today. Okay, do it for 10 seconds today.
Yeah.
Like that's the nature of them. Like you build up the power, the force that's going to move through the obstacle that you're facing currently. And if listening to a podcast or learning SEO or copywriting or whatever it might be, it's like, I can only do this for 5 minutes a day. So do it for 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow and then the next day, and then you do it for 5 minutes in the morning and then once at night. It's only 5 minutes. You can do 5 minutes. And so you wind up building enough force to kind of move through it and get to a place where what you bring to the party is a lot of stuff that you've built up slowly and in small chunks, but you wind up with a whole bunch of resources that you can bring there. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So value the continuing of the momentum. One thing I like that for me is helpful is just checking things off on my list. Gives me motivation. So sometimes if I'm not feeling motivated, what I'll do is I'll find something on my list that I think I can do quickly and easily, and I'll just do it. And then I get to put the nice red check mark on my daily to-do list, and actually gives me motivation. Just to be able to feel like I've gotten something done. There's actually kind of the opposite of this. And I can't remember what it was called. I was reading some book on motivation, and I think they called it the fuck it effect. The fuck it effect was basically like, there's the opposite of this, which is like, if you haven't checked something off, or you're working on something, or you didn't do what you were supposed to do, you'd think that people would be like, okay, well now I have to really work really hard to make up for it. Actually, what ends up happening oftentimes is you get the fuck it effect. People just go, fuck it. I'm just going to throw today away. So it's sort of the opposite of that is find something really little to give yourself some momentum and give yourself a feeling of accomplishment. And it's going to give you extra motivation. It looks like maybe Fletch is fixing his light. That's fine. So I'm going to move on to willpower. I think we had a whole podcast on this. I don't remember, but basically the idea is willpower is sort of like a muscle. And it's also something that when you wake up in the morning every day, you have a certain amount of it. You can build that certain amount over time, but you have a certain amount of it and use it over the course of the day, which is why it's, if there's something you really don't want to do, you want to work on that early on in the day. So like if working out is going to be something that your brain's going to give you a lot of resistance to, do that early in the morning. There's I think Brian Tracy even wrote a whole book called Eat That Frog. And the idea is that you do the thing you least want to do first thing in the morning. This is going to give you kind of is related to the checking off and the momentum as well. It's going to give you some of that momentum. It's going to make you feel great. I did the one thing I really don't want to do. Now my day feels open, and you're probably going to feel a lot more motivated. It's going to be a lot easier to get stuff done. But again, there's a lot of times where you don't really need the willpower, the motivation to push through things. So really try to reframe things. I don't really remember exactly what my point was here, but I think quantifying things is important. I don't know. I'm going to skip past that. Maybe I'll come back to that. Okay, here's a little bit more kind of quick hitting ideas. This is definitely Brian Tracy. He said this, feeling listless, make a list. And it's kind of funny, but it's actually pretty true. I know it works really well for me. If I don't want to do something, or if something is feeling too much, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just make a list of things that I need to do, or things that are directly related to that, or subtasks. I think I've got so I think I've mentioned it before, like breaking up tasks right here. Breaking up action sets. So really everything is an action set. So even just typing a letter is an action set. You got to like, I'm moving to here and there. Anyway, so if there's an action set, rank the website. Okay, well, it's unclear, first of all, but also, breaking it up into smaller and smaller things, or just writing down, okay, what is it that I really need to do right now? Or sometimes I've got a long list and it's kind of too messy for the day. It's like, okay, let me just write down like the next thing I need to do and any like details related to that. So I'll just try to make a list. Feeling listless, make a list. This is a nice trick. I think it'll probably work for you. If you're feeling like not working, okay, well, make a list of the next couple things that you need to do. What do you think about this, Fletch?
Yeah, I like that. I ducked out with the willpower. I had some screaming kid that I
it's totally fine.
See about real quick. Like, so this ties into the listless piece. this is something that I've had to I've experienced a lot, right? It wasn't necessarily even with willpower, but like the concept I look at a lot of this, like I guess from, is like doing what you feel like doing is not the that's like what you feel like doing is not the thing that should lead you, right? The like all too often in life, and I think probably anyone who hears this can find examples in their own life where it's like, yeah, I don't want to go to the gym and exercise, or I don't want to um go do my bookkeeping, or I don't want to go mow the lawn or whatever. But then as you get into it, it's like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good right now, right?
Yeah.
And so like following your feelings is bad. The fact that feelings follow action is really what happens. And so if you find yourself not really like, I know I should do that, but I don't feel like doing that. Okay, well, just go do that for 5 minutes and you might feel different. And so in that way, you can't really decide what you're going to do by what you feel like doing, even though feelings have a huge component in what you actually do. And so in that way,
Yeah.
we kind of circle back around again to engineering conditions such that you feel like doing the thing.
Yeah.
So
That
it's
you
like,
really know
well,
you
if I
should do.
feel like doing this thing because I know that 5 minutes into it, I'm going to feel great about the fact that I'm doing it. Like, willpower, scientifically speaking, all the research I've read, I read scientific papers, probably quite a lot for somebody that doesn't have a PhD or works in academia. Like everything I read indicates that you've got a certain amount of like willpower. Okay, well,
Yeah.
only use that willpower on stuff that's going to be important, right? Use it on your priority stuff.
Mhm.
Get yourself going. You only have to use it for 30 seconds or 5 minutes or whatever it might be, and then the emotions are going to really follow and then take over and lead again, which makes it easy, which means you're not using willpower anymore. And that really kind of comes back around to the feeling listless component. It's like if you're feeling listless, there's a pretty reasonable expectation that the reason you're feeling listless is because you have not done anything that really moved you forward in a while.
Yeah.
And so, well, you're just not in the habit of knowing that some of this action is going to turn out feeling really, really good. You don't have that
Mhm.
feedback loop that's going to continue to fuel your emotions and make you
Which is
want to do more and more. So
which
use
is
a
why
little bit
like
of the willpower and get going on some of this stuff, and then the habits are gonna establish themselves differently. Go ahead. Yeah.
no, you said several things that are great in there, and I think these four things I've highlighted: the following feelings versus feelings, following action, and then just starting and feeling listless and breaking things up into small actions.
Mm-hmm.
They're all kind of connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I think I want to touch on, sometimes you don't want to, you feel like you don't want to do something, but like you pointed out, as soon as you get into it, you start feeling good about yourself, and actually the feelings will follow the action. Now, some things you follow your feelings, like who you marry or something like that. That's a little bit different, but we're talking about kind of
That
like
might be
taking
the most
action.
dangerous, David.
Right, right. And I think feelings are useful, but you put them in the proper place,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Well,
they're
there's no
definitely
denying how
counterproductive.
powerful they are. So if they're powerful, like it's gonna likely take a little willpower
It's a
to
double-edged
to
sword for
to
sure.
to overcome that. But it is what
Yeah.
it is. If it takes
And
that to
so
get yourself moving in the right direction, it's what it takes. So
I'd like to kind of put these last three pieces together into one kind of statement. So you're feeling listless. What I suggest, I think is a really good technique, is make a list of kind of smaller actions and just start. Just do the first thing. Try to come up with the first thing, and try to make it as specific and small as possible, even if it only takes 20 seconds. you checking that thing off your list, and just starting is going to change your feelings. And as a result, you're going to feel some momentum, and you're going to feel more motivation. You're not going to need as much motivation. You're not going to need as much willpower. So I would suggest using that willpower just to start, just getting going. So making a list is actually kind of a first action. A lot of times on a list, I'll be like, make this list. That's an action. And so I can actually check that off as I'm making the list, or as I feel like it gets to a certain point. So that's I like that. And then your feelings change, as Fletch pointed out. And so therefore your willpower is not really needed anymore. There's so many times where I really don't want to do something. It's a big task set, but I really feel like I need to do it. And it's like, okay, just 5 minutes, just get myself started on it. And oftentimes I find myself, it's an hour later and I've really hit it hard and I've done a lot of it. And it's because I just fucking got started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see, we're a little over an hour here, so we'll try to get through these things. I feel like we've hit a lot of really good stuff. Fletch, how do you feel about setting due dates for goals?
I don't.
He doesn't feel about those things. Okay, let me think. Or actually ask him what he thinks about that. So you don't think about it.
I don't. So I have thought about it, and I realized, having thought about it, that it meant I already knew what it was going to take to achieve the thing and how long it would take. And if that were the case, I would have already done it, and I wouldn't need to still do it. So
yeah.
I don't believe I already know what it's going to take to do a certain thing. And so I don't put a date on it, because for me, it tends to exacerbate my anxiety. And that doesn't really work well with the way my personality is set up.
I think for most people,
if I'd already done it, I wouldn't need to do it again. And because I haven't done it, I don't know what it's going to take. So I do not put dates on my goals.
You have done it and you do need to do it again, but in a slightly different context or something, then you can.
But like, even if so, I got to the point where, I squatted 450 when I was 28 years old. Well, I haven't done that when I was 47. So it's a different goal now. Right. So it's like, I don't know how long it's going to take. So I don't do it.
I think we both are pretty well aligned on this. I think there's a lot of gurus out there who say, set a deadline for your goal. It'll push you. And I think that's generally incorrect and improper. I get that sometimes it's like, you got to pay the mortgage, or you got a bookie that's going to break your legs or whatever. So in those cases, maybe that does make sense. But overall, especially in a lot of these cases, you're going to be going somewhere you've never been before. You don't even know. You don't even know what the road's going to be like.
Excitement instead of anxiety. Like, for me to live on this beach,
that's great.
I want to be there faster. And so that's going to be the thing. Like, if I have a date, who's to say I couldn't accomplish it twice as fast? Like, if I'm really excited about it, like, I'd rather use that as the kind of component for that. Yeah.
Using this picture here, it's like I'm on the beach and I identify a peak that I want to go to, but I don't even know where I need to go to. I don't even know the path. I don't need to. Am I going to need to turn? Am I going to walk straight, or is there
maybe there's cannibals up there
all the way around?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe there's cannibals up there. Maybe actually I get halfway there and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go there because that's where the cannibals are. Right.
Yeah.
So I think setting due dates goals are good. I think in general, goals are pretty freaking good.
We all have goals. Like, there's no getting around having goals, but I don't use dates on.
I think this is going to actually reduce your ability to take action in a lot of circumstances. Maybe initially it gives you a fire under your ass if it's a short goal and you're like, hey, there's something to be said for.
Well, because what a date does is it adds clarity, right? But it's in a way some kind of false clarity, which we think we can get there by. Yeah, and so you don't want to just pretend that there's clarity when there's not. And so a date does add clarity. And so it can be more motivating in a certain way, but
then it's
ambiguous.
Demotivating.
Right. Yeah. Especially if you don't hit it by
you don't really know.
Give it up. Yeah, you don't know. So
it's like, I don't know where, let's say I don't know where Fletch lives. I'm like, hey, Fletch, I'm going to drive to your house and I want to get there in 30 minutes. It's like, oh, I live in Phoenix and you live in Dallas. So that due date was stupid, right? It's going to take as long as it's going to take.
Yeah. I don't know how to get there. Right. So,
and not only that, but everybody's got their own path. Maybe I'm riding a bike, and so I'm not driving a car. So
maybe along the way, you're going to have an amazing experience that you're going to realize, oh, I'm just going to fly Fletch to meet me because I found this amazing place I am now. that I wouldn't have
Right.
experienced had I tried to rush too quickly to get to where Fletch is. Right. These are just,
Absolutely.
ambiguous stories. But like for me, I had no intention of being online as like a way I earned money, but it just so happened that the path I was on, that was the next logical choice. I wasn't like in a way, I wasn't like, I'm going to be able to retire with my construction business by 2015 or something like that. Like if that would have been the goal, I would not have said, oh, let me go check this online thing out. Right.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have made sense to get me to the
Yeah.
retiring, selling my
Closed you
construction
off.
business in 2015. I would have
Yeah.
been closed off from this different path that's led to a much better situation for me. Like there's a lot of downsides to having dates on specific goals that you have.
Yeah.
And even specific goals,
So
like
I would
I'm going to
avoid
sell
that.
a digital marketing agency for X number of dollars. Like,
Just
well,
I think it's
maybe,
better.
I won't, but maybe I'll earn enough money where I don't have to sell anything and I'm still done.
Focus
It's
more
like,
on your inputs.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
and making sure that you're working on something that's important and that's valuable. And really, to
Mhm.
me, a good way of putting it that I like someone as kind of success is just like work on every day building your house. You're building your house. You're putting another brick. Every day is another brick in your house, which is the house is like a metaphor for where you want to go. And so did you move forward today? Did you put enough time and energy? Did you work on the right things? Maybe something you thought was going to take 5 minutes actually took 5 hours, and that's okay. That's how long it was always going to take.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
You're
And
just
if you have a
wrong
due
about how
date for
long it was going
things,
to take. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now this is different. This is really different if you're an employee, because a lot of times as employees, you have much more regulated tasks that are much more well understood. Like I set due dates for my employees. Sometimes it's like, hey, I need this keyword research done by this time. I know how long it takes. It's done it at a bunch of times, right? Maybe there's some expectations that are violated, and then we adjust from there. But for yourself,
But
I don't
in
recommend
that,
dates for goals.
that's the difference in role between like following a path and trying to figure out like and being open to what you can see while you're following that path versus I just need to get this objective done. Right.
Yeah.
If you're getting paid to get an objective, a lot of this goes out the door.
Right. Like
right.
A football player, right? The quarterback can't just be like, you know what? I'm going to throw the ball when I'm goddamn ready. No, you got linemen.
And you figure out what you're going to
gotta...
figure out while you're running around on whatever route you run. Like that doesn't work. Right. There's stuff organizationally speaking where this is not applied to that. Do that when that's the right way to do things, but then also have an alternate path that you can
I
not
think that
have
way
a time
too much
consideration. Yeah.
There's way too much in like personal development where they're like, okay, set the due date for aggressive due date because you'll get it done quicker. It's like, well, probably not. Okay, so here's another thing that really helps me. I try to think about double dipping is what I usually would call it in my mind, but amplifiers. I think David Mills had a really good thing about aligning vectors. So what this to me means, it's very motivating for me when I can identify like a task that I mentioned my project areas before that helps all three of those project areas. So there's sometimes it's like, oh, by running this Maps SEO test on one of my GMBs, it actually helps my clients. It helps my lead gen, and it helps my teaching because it gives me all those things. It helps those.
You talked about this at the event that you had in Colorado, David.
Yeah,
right? You were talking about this exact thing. Yep.
And I had this I drew this, what I guess looked complicated at first to people, kind of like a visual two-dimensional representation for my business. And, when I work on this one part, like when I work on my client stuff, it actually supports the info business because it gives me more information and more experience to teach people with.
It's like that
to me it's a feedback loop. Yeah. And that helps me take additional action because it's just, if it's more valuable, if you're getting paid $1,000 versus, $1 for something, then that's going to be much more motivating. And understanding that when you get these, it's not like a 2x type of thing. It's usually like a 10x or like 100x or like 1,000x. Think about it as exponential growth. So when I can triple dip, that's like 1,000x benefit that I get from something. And those kind of things are extremely I'm extremely motivated to take care of. What do you think about this, Fletch?
Yeah, I agree. Like one of the kind of maybe interesting, but like one of the odd things that I say odd again, maybe one of the things that helped me understand search engine optimization the most was focusing on human behavior and what makes us believe certain things, because the algorithm is written by humans.
Okay.
And they tend to write programs, computer code,
humans,
formulas, the way they look at things. And so by thinking about how humans behave, my understanding of search engine optimization exponentially improved. But then what that did was feed back to creating content that would help humans make decisions, which then improved conversion. And so those things really feed off of one another in a way that, had I just tried to learn what other people are doing with SEO and building links or H tags or whatever whoever is teaching SEO is doing, right? Not saying that's bad, but had I not I guess started and really tried to maintain my understanding of humans, there's a lot that I wouldn't have seen had I not done this. And so my vector really, because you're not going to make money on the internet unless you understand how people make decisions, because that's the person's going to click and buy the whatever. But by staying there and realizing that SEO really aligns with human behavior, it's like, once you understand that, it's like, oh, now I get to double dip, right? I get to be better at SEO as well as conversion. And then those two things are going to put me in a unique position to be able to provide a solution to people that, if I was just trying to do the SEO thing, not think about humans, I wouldn't have ever gotten. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and
I guess that's
one
of the ways I look at it. Yep.
When you understand that, it makes it easier. You're more motivated to do that because you realize that there's greater benefit.
Well, yeah, because
so another example,
like human behavior is the thing I'm naturally motivated by anyway. And so in a
right,
way, I was naturally motivated to do this thing, and I tied in this association, and it just it's worked out better, right? So,
and it helps you in your personal life, I assume, understanding human behavior. Why the fuck did my wife do that? Right, stuff like that, or why did this other dude do that, or whatever.
Instead of why did my wife do that? Right? Those are different statements. Same statement.
That's very true.
Inflection. It's just different, right? So
let's see. So I gotta head out here in about 10 minutes. So I'm gonna try to power through some of these things. YouTube is a great example. Try to explain this to clients, because not only does YouTube, having videos on your site creates greater engagement, because it's the most engaging form of content, video. People like to just click and sit back and be entertained and informed. So it helps with your SEO, but it also helps with your conversion, because they stay on your site longer, they engage with your brand longer. So you kind of double dip there. A classic example that I used, and I identified this early on in Dallas SEO Geek, I was like, so this is the website that I rank, that bring clients to me. I rank for Dallas SEO related terms. I remember thinking, okay, I can go out and I can cold call these, I don't remember exactly what it was. I can cold call these people and I can build my sales. Or what I can do is I can work on the SEO for Dallas SEO Geek, and it helps build my SEO skills, but it also helps build my sales, because it attracts more clients. It makes it easier to sell to them. So that's an example of me kind of double dipping. You have any other examples of like double dipping or amplifiers or anything like that?
Like,
you can think
there's a bunch of like the double dipping thing. Like in one of the things I really like to do is go meet people face to face and share stories about where we came from. Right? How'd you get into what you're doing? What do you do now? Why are you doing that? Like, it just leads to, like, relationships are a huge opportunity for a lot of people. And I know there's some personality involved in all that kind of thing, but like, I really am interested in people and how they got to where they are in life, and why they do what they do.
Alexa, stop. Sorry about that.
Yell at Amazon. There you go.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, you know, you call it double, triple dipping or whatever, is that, you know, I actually have some amount of relationship with a lot of people, and they know not just what I do, but they remember the story about why I'm doing what I do. And because they, like, stories are just a lot more universally rememberable than just facts.
Yeah.
So putting yourself in a situation where, and creating situations where you can share what you do and create a situation where you can tell a story about why you do what you do, that what you actually do is embedded in that thing, is like a huge nugget for a lot of people to get themselves into better and better situations to work with people when you can do valuable stuff for them. So, you know, for me, it wasn't really what I was trying to do, but when I began like thinking about it, realizing like this is something that's working really well. Like, it's helping me help more people. I'm making more money. More people are, you know, getting stuff they need done. The opportunity to talk about these kinds of things with other people and form it up into a story, which is a lot more memorable. And like, oh yeah, I met this guy who, you know, went to Alaska and built this cabin, and he had a construction. It's like, you know, people would say that to somebody else, right? Because it's kind of interesting. It's not really salesy, all that kind of thing. But I get, like, one of the things that is the most powerful element you have are the stories you have, right? And it can move you massively forward, but it can also keep you completely stuck if you believe that the story you have limits what you do versus lets you go wherever you want to go with it. This is a little segue into other stuff that I talk about, and we'll probably talk about on this series. But like the double dipping thing, it happens all the time. Like when you talk to, like, hey, I do XYZ for these kinds of people, and this is the result. Like the whole elevator pitch thing is the stupidest effing business advice I have ever heard in my life. Nobody remembers that. Nobody. And so if they don't remember it, like you got on an elevator with Richard Branson and you gave an elevator pitch, that was, you wasted your time.
Yeah, you waste your opportunity too.
It's
also a little bit like,
if you talk about, so this gets back to the double dipping thing. If you talk about something that person's actually going to remember, they might be like, oh yeah, what's that guy that went to Alaska and built a cabin, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I do stuff online. Most of the time when I meet somebody, I talk about that kind of stuff because it's memorable. I don't talk about really what I do, but in a way,
I want to
really maximizing your ability to get a certain amount of work done in a very short amount of time, right?
Yeah, the elevator thing is funny because you're totally right about that. Like that's a little bit like getting on the elevator with a beautiful woman and asking her to marry you. I think that it'd be, you know, if you get on the elevator with Richard Branson, your goal, if should you think it'd be valuable for you, should be to build a relationship with him,
to be remembered,
and that be remembered, right? Well, that's going to be part of the relationship,
yeah.
Right now, and if it because the chances of him, you know, him being like, oh, I want to invest in your business idea, I've never heard of that ever working for anybody in such a short period of time. I mean, I get that like on Shark Tank or something, they have to make like a quick pitch, but that's like the TV context show. Is completely different.
different
Right.
context.
Okay.
Yep.
So I want to cover a few of these things here. I think an important habits are really important. So you can replace bad with good. If you have a bad habit, try to replace it with a good habit, but also just kind of like the habits, especially you have like in the morning, mental habits, exercise habits. These are all going to be really, really important for taking action. I find that when I exercise in the morning and I do yoga and meditation in the morning, that I just work better throughout the day. Things are more efficient. It's not just that I have more, it feels like I have more time to work, or that at the end of the day, I've just gotten way more done, or the quality of the work has been much better. I'm giving any, I mean, we only got like a couple minutes. Anything,
No,
why don't you do this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Pick one of these, one or two of these that you really want to talk about.
You know, honestly, environment hacks, like I'm going to talk about fasting again. Like, cut all the shit out of your life. Stop eating junk food. Don't give yourself the ability to gain pleasure from watching a TV show or eating Doritos or Oreos. Don't listen to music you like, whatever it might be, and just get devoid of inputs. Let your mind be the only thing that's really talking to you. That has been one of the biggest and best things that have ever happened to me, is to go through that, is to go through a point where I consciously decided that I was not going to put stuff into my, physical experience, whether with, food, drink, water, or not water, television programs, music, TV programs, whatever it might be, right? Getting to that point, like you don't really know who you are until you do something like this, because what you feel like you are is so shaped by what you get as inputs. It's the best piece of advice I could give anyone. It's great, like across the board. So
yeah. And then after you've removed the inputs, you can rebuild from there and add things like beautiful backgrounds to your I want to talk about bookends. This is something that helps me a lot. I try to bookend. What this means is like I think this was I can't remember his name, Darren Hardy. He talked about this, and basically I try to bookend my day, my week, my month, my quarter, my year. And I try to spend like a little bit at the beginning of every day, kind of looking forward to the day, just like 5 minutes, and then like another 5 minutes at the end of the day, recapping the day and actually planning the next day. This is actually really good for my actions, because what it does is some amount of reflection is really important. You probably shouldn't spend all day sitting around reflecting, but sometimes you should. But in general, spending just a little bit of extra time. Don't just like work, and then head out for the day. A little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end really goes a long way towards getting your brain in the right place and feeling the sense of accomplishment as you look over, this is what I got done today, and look forward to, this is what I'm going to get done tomorrow. So this is something that I find very useful for me.
Yeah. That's one of the things I tend to like, coming out of so much anxiety and not sleeping. Like I realized I was really yearning for that. And so the whole getting ready for the next day was almost like it was something I didn't want to do, because it was like I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up thinking about what I needed to do that day. And if I woke up in the middle of the night, I'd just start on it, 2:00 in the morning, whatever it might be. Right.
Yeah.
So kind of in a way, that's probably an extreme example for most people. But like when you wake up knowing what you can do to move things, not just forward, but forward in a direction that's going to make your life better, as long as you're not in that extreme example of, anxiety and tension and worry. It's really a great way to approach things in life. Even if you have a job, saying, hey, I'm gonna go to work and I'm gonna be spiffy and be engaging and open, and then I'm gonna, I like spiffy, that's a good word, right?
Yeah, who doesn't
get done with the day, maybe have a light meal or whatever you're doing, and then just Yeah. And then 2 hours at the end of the day, I'm going to work on stuff that's good.
Yeah. So you brought up something that I think was really good. That's kind of part of the bookend process, which is at the end of the day. Again, it doesn't take that much time for me to kind of look over today and then kind of plan tomorrow. But what I found is that if I try to, this sometimes naturally happens because sometimes you just have stuff you have to do, and that's okay. But on the days in which I wake up in the morning and I go into work and I don't have my list and I have to build the list, those days tend to, you'd be surprised at how much of a loss of productivity that can cost you in terms of trying to figure out now what I need to do today, what I kind of now in the moment, what I need to do, as opposed to already walking in with a list of things that I need to do. So that's part of the bookend process. I find this to
like
be
to
really
me,
useful.
when I try to do that in the morning, it tends to be a lot more shaped by what I feel like doing. And so I'd like to try to
that's a good point.
engineer around it. It's like, that my list was made yesterday and this is what I got to do. It's like I kind of become my own boss, but the boss only existed yesterday. And so it's like, this is what I got to do. Right. And I can't even talk to him.
I think you identified it pretty well.
He doesn't exist anymore. So it's kind of one of those things. Yeah.
It's more of an intellectual decision the day before than it is an emotional decision.
Yeah. Cause you don't have to do it now. So you can actually make an intellectual decision. It's like, oh, me in the future has to do this. I don't have to do it right now.
Yeah. Fuck that guy.
But then you wake up and you get handed this list. It's like, shit, I don't want to do this.
Right.
My boss told me I have to. So this is what I'm going to do.
I better get it done. All right. Well, thanks. And I know that we could talk longer about this, but hopefully this has been very helpful for you. I've enjoyed shooting this episode. I think it's great. I think that this is a really key point for me personally. And I still have stuff I need to work on. I think everybody does. Most people do.
I don't have anything.
Let us know what you think. Leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, or shoot us an email or whatever on Facebook or whatever, and we'll go from there. You have any last thoughts, Fletch?
No, just do the thing. Just
right.
Do what we told you to do, and then send us a thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah.